In this episode, I embark on my journey, starting in southeast Norway. Take the train from Gjøvik to Oslo with my son, then travel to friends who have a cabin just inside the border in Sweden. I camp in the wilderness, experiencing both physical and mental ups and downs. I have to push my bike a lot and encounter some challenges with it. I meet interesting and generous people along the way, experience days of snow and below zero temperatures. And I have to find alternative places to sleep to seek shelter from the weather. The day begins with packing and getting on my bike. I cycle to the train station where I meet Oliver. And we take the train together from Gjøvik to Oslo. We've spent Easter together, and now he's heading home while I begin on my journey around Norway and the world. Cycling to the train station is short and easy, as there are bike paths all the way. The train ride takes only 2 hours from Gjøvik to Oslo, where we say goodbye. Then I take the train to Halden, which is southeast in Norway and right by Sweden. I'm traveling this far because spring starts earlier here. The last stretch of the day, I cycle from Halden in Norway to my friend's cabin in Sweden, where I'll spend the first night. Here we see signs of early spring and enjoy a fantastic view from this idyllic cabin. Norway is just across the water. I don't cycle far the first day, but it's tough with a heavy bike, being unfit, and challenging terrain all day. But cycling in nature makes it easier as it's beautiful, peaceful, and a place I enjoy. Starting this way of traveling is tough, no matter how mentally prepared you are. Even though I cycle short days, it's still tough. This bridge connects Norway and Sweden. I'm heading back into Norway. My first camp in the woods this trip, I cook my food the way I like it. I only bring ingredients and make homemade food while enjoying nature. The next day starts with a cup of coffee. Then I continue the journey in nice weather. I enjoy the weather and I'm still excited about how this life will be. I have to push the bike up several steep hills and stop to filter water and refill. You don't really need to filter water in Norway, but I'm practicing before I travel to Asia in October and enjoying this beautiful nature we have in Norway. When I make lunch, I dry and air out all the equipment. By the end of this day, I'm tired. I need a day off. I find a camping spot nearby and I head there the next day. When you're tired, you feel a bit lonely when you're alone in the challenge with no one to share it with. I was a bit surprised by that, as the feeling of loneliness is unfamiliar to me, since I enjoy being alone. Fortunately, it was only for a short period and passed. I've been on many solo camping trips and I'm used to it, but then I was going home again. Now I'm on a permanent journey and everything is different. I began to question whether I made the right choice. I began to question whether I made the right choice. When I arrive at Rørvik camping, I'm so tired that I don't film anything. This camping site doesn't open for another month, but Tor Harald, the owner, lets me stay here for 2 days. The next day starts with nice weather in this lovely place. You're not allowed to have loud parties here. It's a quiet and family-friendly camping site. I spend this day just cooking and resting, baking bread for breakfast and making calzone from last night's dinner, and talk a lot with Tor Harald. I talk a lot with Tor Harald and a guest who helps him, and his name is Arnt. I was also allowed to sleep inside a living room he's renovating for a night when it was forecasted to snow all night. In the evening, we sat and talked, and I was told about a car graveyard nearby. Here are between 800 and 1,000 cars overgrown in the forest. This stop at Turharal's camping was the turning point I needed, a confirmation that this is the adventure I'm seeking. Meeting generous people who assist a stranger and share stories. When I continue cycling, I feel that my body and mentality are much better. It's much easier to cycle and enjoy the rest of the days, even though it's now starting to snow. And it's full winter. This gives me adventures I wouldn't have had otherwise. The landscape goes from spring to winter. But it's important to take time to look at such beautiful animals even in this weather. To avoid setting up the tent in the snow, I found an old shed in the forest. I turned this into my home for the night. The next day, I met a man who stopped me and wanted to talk. After a while, it turned out that I was talking to an old Norwegian sports hero. He was in the elite in his younger days. In 1982, while in first place in the Holmenkollen cross ski race, he had a fall. He was paralyzed in his leg. Instead of using a wheelchair, he started running with crutches. He was the fastest in Norway and represented Norway around the world in Paralympic sports. I have just met an inspiring person and a fantastic story. I enjoy this trip with everything I get to see and the people I meet. After a long day and the sun soon setting, I couldn't find any places to pitch the tent. I took a chance and knocked on a farmer's door and asked if I could pitch the tent in his yard. He said yes, but that I could also just lay in the barn. I accepted, and once again, I'm impressed by the generosity people show to a stranger. Thanks to all of you who makes this a positive adventure for me. The next day, I cycle to Oslo, where I'll stay with family and friends since I'm going to the hospital for treatment of my illness. In this neighborhood is where I moved from a month ago, and I'll spend a night with my son, his mother, and stepfather. In the next episode, we will travel into the forest to watch black grouse mating game. See you next time, and thank you for watching.